Hello my bullet journaling beauties, it is Erin here, and I remember how excited I was to start bullet journaling when I first found out that it existed. I was very lucky that I was in a position to be able to buy a dotted notebook right from the very beginning, but I know that not everyone has that opportunity. Lined notebooks, however, are much more accessible, so if you have one, I'm going to show you how you can use it from today to start bullet journaling right now. The notebook I'm using in this video is actually A4 sized, which is massive for me. This is it compared to my A5 journal. You really can use whatever notebook you have available. You might just have to work out your spacing a little bit differently to me, and you might have less space left over on the page. But whatever notebook you're using, I recommend you start with one of these. I'm still calling it a grid spacing page, even though we don't have a dot grid to work with here. The idea of a grid spacing page is that it is a quick reference for you to grab out anytime you need to set up a new spread that has all of the most common measurements that you might need. So the first thing I like to do on a lined page like this is number from 1 all the way down each of the lined spaces. So in my case, I have 28 lined spaces from the top to the bottom of the page, and I've worked out that those are 8 millimeters apart. So I've added 8 millimeter measurements horizontally along the top row as well. And I'm just going to use those as a basis for a grid for anything that I might need a grid for, like a habit tracker page or something like that. I also like to add measurements that tell me the width of the page in centimeters or millimeters, or you can use an imperial measurement if you are in the States as well. Something that is a quick reference so you don't have to measure it every time you might want to know how wide or how tall your page is. I also like to have a quick reference for the center, which you can do very easily just by folding your page. And also quick references for dividing the page into thirds or quarters or halves as well. Just make sure you're writing down your measurement for each of these spaces as well so that you don't have to measure it again later. Most of the time, notebooks that have lined paper typically have pretty thin pages. I would guess this one is about 80 GSM, which isn't very thick, and I think most of the time they assume that people are going to be writing in these notebooks with biros rather than felt tip pens or anything like that, but it does give you this advantage where you can stick your little cheat sheet behind the page and then you can just see where all of your markings are, and you don't have to measure things out. You can kind of draw over stuff, you can use it like a template, and it's really handy. So even if you have other layouts that you make a lot, just make yourself a little cheat sheet and then save yourself some time and measurements. I'm going to put my little cheat sheet away in the back of the book now for whenever I need it, and we're going to get stuck into the first page, which is for a monthly calendar overview. So technically I've already set up for June 2022, but I'm going to be using that month again here as an example, just in case you were wondering what's going on. But you could use this inspiration for any month in any year that you like. It doesn't have to be the same as mine. I wanted my calendar boxes to be relatively square, so I'm going with 2 spaces tall for each of them. And starting with the center of the page as my reference point, I've made each of the boxes for each day of the week 1.5 centimeters wide. I've also tried to make sure it's kind of centered on the page, so I'd have lots of room at the top for a heading for the month, because that's going to double as my cover page, and also lots of room at the bottom of the page for some decoration too. So I've just added a little colorful dot in the corner of each of the boxes, and that is going to be where I put the number for each day of the week as well. June starts on a Wednesday, and I like my weeks to start on Mondays, but you can absolutely change that around if you'd like to. I'm using felt tip markers in this video, so a Bic Intensity pen and sometimes a Sharpie pen, just depending on which one I pick up, because I have a few fine liners on my desk. And they do ghost through the page a little bit, which means that you can see it from the other side, but it hasn't sort of seeped through the page and saturated it, so the other side isn't ruined, but you can see it a little bit, which is what ghosting is. It actually doesn't bother me all that much, but I know it really annoys some people, so if you despise ghosting in your bullet journal or in other notebooks, then I recommend that you go for a biro rather than a felt tip pen, or even something like a friction pen, which is an erasable one. And that way you won't have to deal with ghosting anywhere near as much as you would with a felt-tipped fine liner. I have a pretty extensive stash of paper and stickers and washi tapes and stuff like that, but if you haven't built up your library yet, I really recommend starting with some simple stuff that you might already have in your house. So things like wrapping paper. If you keep greeting cards, go through your old stack of greeting cards and see if any of them are cute and maybe not so sentimental that you'd be willing to cut them up. You can also use markers to draw on separate paper that's not part of your notebook, so that you can then use as though it's a scrapbooking paper and stuff like that too. So don't feel like just because you see people on YouTube having a whole lot of stuff in their bullet journals that you also need to have a whole lot of stuff in order to bullet journal. It is not true. Having said that, if there is anything in this video that catches your eye and you'd like to get your hands on it, jump into the description. I have left links to everything that you can buy that is available down there, so you can find all of that stuff there, and some of them may be affiliate links, just so you know. Most of the stuff I'm using in this video is a combination of washi tapes from the Washi tape shop, some scrapbooking paper that I got in a set from Wish, and origami that I got from Daiso, which is a cheap Japanese home goods type shop here in Australia. But I really do encourage you to start with what you have before you start buying stuff, and make sure that the bullet journaling system works for you before you put too much money into it. If you're not so keen on drawing out your calendars yourself, you can also get stickers like this one. This is from Officeworks. It came in a pack with the whole year's worth of stickers in there. So then you can just add the numbers yourself for the June that you are applying, or whatever other month it is, and add your events down below the calendar, and then you have a different kind of calendar page. One with absolutely no drawing of lines necessary. I've left the left page kind of blank for the moment because I'm going to show you how I like to deal with ghosting in a kind of creative way if you are one of the people that find ghosting really irritating. But for now, we're going to skip to the right page, and I'm going to set up a gratitude log and also a goal section. If you're working with a less tall book than me, then you might need a whole page for your gratitude log just based on how many lines you have vertically on the page. I can get away with it because I have quite a few. So I've split the month in half into two columns. So on the left column, I have the numbers 1 through 15. In the right column, I have 1 through 30 because June is one of those wonderful months that has an even number of days. This might be a little bit wonky if you're using it in a month that has 31 days, or it might be a little bit shorter if you're using it in a February. This gives me space to write down a few words of gratitude every day. I always like to find something to be grateful for, but if you wanted a bit more space, if you wanted to write a whole line every day or even more than that, you could spread this out over 2 pages, make it a full double page spread. Or if you don't like recording gratitude items, or if you already do that in a separate notebook or something like that, then you could absolutely skip this part. That's the beauty of bullet journaling. The idea is that you make it work for what you need. Since I have so much space to play with on my page here, I'm using my washi tape as kind of a divider halfway down, as well as a space to put my heading. So up the top of the page, I've used one of these labels to put my gratitude heading on. I'm going to do the same thing down here. And one of my favorite tricks to make things look really neat and tidy is just to put it in a box. So I'm going to draw a box here that my goal section is going to go into. This is just a space to write down anything that I want to accomplish over the course of the month. And it can really be anything. It could be fitness goals, it could be study goals, it could be skincare goals, it could be finishing the video game that you've been working on, it could be whatever you like. Are you ready for my ghosting solution? On the left page, I'm literally just going to collage stuff all over it so that the page is covered up, so that the ghosting is no longer visible. It is absolutely one of my favorite ways to hide it, if there is a reason to hide it, although I don't always necessarily do that because sometimes I think it looks kind of nice and lived in. I also wanted to mention that if you really wanted a dotted notebook and you aren't in a position to buy one, whether they're not available near you or it's just unattainable for you right now, you can actually download .grid printable pages online that you can then just cut out and stick in your book. And then you essentially have a dot grid notebook without having to try. And the fact that you have several layers of paper also kind of acts as insurance against ghosting and bleeding. So that's just something to keep in mind. And I will pop a link in the description to a downloadable dot grid paper as well, in case that's something that you're interested in. If you have a printer, obviously, that might be really helpful for that too. Lots of these green bits of paper are from a stationery set I got from Wish, and I will pop a link in the corner to my April bullet journal setup, which I used a lot of it in a Twilight-inspired theme, which I realize is very nerdy, and I completely accept that. I just wanted to mention that I realize the English is quite questionable. Here's another tip for you if you're using things that aren't dot grid notebooks, or even if you are and you find it difficult to decorate or come up with ideas. Templates. Templates are so good. These two templates are from different places, but both were really affordable. So if you need help with drawing circles or drawing decorations or setting out different kinds of layouts, then have a look at what's available as far as templates. They might really help you out. Particularly for layouts like weeklies that you set up over and over again, and sometimes you will find a style that you like and you want to just keep doing the same thing, so templates can be great for that, as well as the template that you made yourself on a bit of paper that you have hanging out at the back of your book now. The page that we're partway into setting up right now is going to be a mood tracker, and I've actually set this up the same way as the mood tracker for my June setup that I'm actually going to be using in my dot grid journal, which I will pop a link to that up in the top right corner if you'd like to see that as well. But basically the idea is I will have colorful blobs, one to represent every day of the month. In this case there will be 30 blobs because there are 30 days in June. I'm trying to keep to colors that match the items that I'm using in the journal, so I've just picked 3 and I'm just using them in the same pattern over again, blue and then pink and then green. And these little plant doodles that I'm doing at the bottom of the page right now are actually a key, and each one of them relates to a different mood. So on the left side I have a little tulip kind of looking flower, and that's representing a very happy mood, and then they kind of gradually go down to a really sad or angry mood on the right side. So in each one of those colourful blobs for each day of the month, I will draw a little flower doodle that represents my mood for that day, based on the ones that are at the bottom of the page. I really like this system because it allows a little bit more flexibility in terms of your mood. So if you were somewhere in between the really happy and the fairly happy moods, then you could draw kind of a combo of the tulip and the little leafy thing and know what you meant by that, if that makes sense. And my favourite thing about this slightly artistic kind of mood tracker style is that at the end of the month, even if you've had a really bad month, you still have a really pretty page in your bullet journal. So I'm excited to spring a little garden from this page, especially given that it's winter here in Australia. So it's nice to have some flowers around me, even if they are just on the pages. On the opposite page from my mood tracker, I always like to have my habit tracker. They just feel like they kind of go hand in hand. So if I'm in a good mood on a particular day, it's pretty likely that I'm ticking off my habits, whereas if I'm not in such a good mood, maybe I'll forget about them or I'll not want to do the things. So anyway, in my bullet journal, I would quite often turn the book sideways so that I could use the longer edge of the page to represent all of the days of the month. But since I've only got 28 spaces here between each of the lines, I thought rather than trying to fit a 30-day month across 28 spaces, I would split it into 2 and keep it horizontal. So I'm drawing out 2 grids. The top one will have numbers for each of the days from the 1st to the 15th, kind of like what we did on the gratitude log earlier. And the lower one will have from the 16th to the 30th, with a little bit of space on the left side for me to add in the habits that I want to track. So in this case, I've left space for 6 habits. I only could think of 5, so I've only written down 5, but there's one more extra space there in case I do think of something later. And for every day that you complete the habit, you get to put a little tick or a dot or something like that in the box so that you know that you did it. And they don't necessarily all have to be habits that you want to do every day. For instance, I don't go to the gym every day, but maybe a few times a week. So don't beat yourself up if you have some blank spaces in there. It's okay to be human. But there's definitely merit in the old don't break the chain kind of system, where if you've done something every day, you're more likely to keep doing it every day when you're writing it down like this, and you can see how dedicated you've been. This scrapbooking style of decorating is really fun because you can really squeeze it into small spaces, as well as have it take up lots of space if you have lots of space. It's really helpful. And I love layering these things together so that textures peek out from behind patterns that peek around the corner from something else. It's, yeah, definitely my preferred way of decorating lately. And I have a lot of stuff that I want to use up, so there's that too. But you can also make a super beautiful bullet journal just with one pen if you wanted to, or just with colored markers or whatever it is that takes your fancy. So just because I like sticking things in my book doesn't mean that you have to. This is going to be our last spread for this setup, and this is the weekly, which is where you put down all of the information about your week, which is, I guess, pretty self-explanatory. If you have a lot of tasks that are really dependent on particular days, then you might like to set up your journal a little bit differently to this. I like to have a little bit of space for each of the days so I can write down any specific events that are going on in those days, and then a big long column on the right side, which is where I put my running task list. So it's just like a to-do list where everything stays on the list, and if you don't get to it, then you can just maybe cross it off tomorrow, and that's okay. But I know there are a lot of people out there who like to have quite a bit of space for each day of the week, so if that's you, then you can absolutely do that, and that's fantastic, and there are some wonderful ideas for how to set up a weekly like that out there on the internet that you can adapt into a lined bullet journal just as much as a dotted one. Or if you wanted to, you could expand this design across a 2-page spread rather than just having it on one page like me, so you could have the days of the week on the left page and your task list on the right page. Especially if you have a lot of tasks, you could even have 2 columns for your task list, or you could split it into different types of things so that you could have one for your chores at home and a separate one for school or work. So it's totally up to you, of course. Half the fun of bullet journaling to me is figuring out what works for you, especially if you're coming from a background of using pre-made planners and finding that they were almost right but not quite, because then you can just make it how you would have wanted it and never have to worry about it again, and it's really fun. So it can be really enjoyable to try different styles of weekly spread or different styles of calendar until you find what works really well for you, and it may not necessarily work that well forever, or you might get bored and then you can just do a different one. And bullet journaling is the best, and I will continue to believe so and shout it from all of the rooftops because I really do love it so much. And on the left page, again, I'm just going to do a bit of a collage-y quote page thing again. Honestly, this is just me being really self-indulgent at this point and just wanting to use up a bunch of my stuff because I have too much, and also it's really fun and relaxing to put all of this stuff down on a page. So if you would like to skip ahead to the flip through, there are chapters in the, what do you call that? The video progress bar down below, and also in the description if you'd like to skip ahead. But if you'd like to watch this and be relaxed with me, feel free. That's it for my lined bullet journal setup for June 2022. Thank you so much for being here, and if you do make anything inspired by this, whether it's in a dotted or a lined bullet journal or even a blank notebook, I would absolutely love to see. Please tag me on Instagram. I am at erinsmith.art. And if this is your first time here, I'd love it if you'd subscribe and stick around for some more bullet journaling adventures in the future. Once again, my name is Erin. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time, and I'll catch you again in another video next Monday. Bye!